Hello, welcome to day 5 of our 5 out of 4 agility tank sew along. Today, all that we have left is adding the binding because yesterday we hemmed it and now we just need to bind it and then it's finished. We've got a finished tank, agility tank. I'm super excited. So I don't really have much to add. Let's just get right into it. Let's add this camera in here so that you can start to see what I'm doing. All right, so we have our top binding. If you haven't cut your binding pieces out already, make sure you do get that done because you're going to want that done before. I mean, you need it, so you need it done right now. All right, so we have our binding piece. We're going to place it right sides together to form a loop. And I'm just going to overlap the ends. Let's see how much does she say to overlap them. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to overlap the ends and sew the short edge together. So I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch. It might end up being 3/8 inch once we start to attach it. And we're just going to do it on the open. So usually with a neckline, what I would do, or a neckband, is I would fold it and then I would fold it again and attach it so that it's folded. But because we're doing binding and not a band, we just want it folded the single time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come here, making sure our straps are all straight. There's no twisting. We are going to find our halfway center points, or halfway points, or our 1/4 points on the top. So we need to find the 1/4 points to the front where the neck is. So we're going to use the part with the T-band and the part that's got our top attached to it. And right in this neck hole here is what we're doing. So we've got our 1/4 points there. And then let's get our 1/4 points here. Those are not going to be the shoulders. So don't try and rely on that. The 1/4 points are rarely the seams, the shoulder seams. So I learned that lesson the hard way, and it took me, I was very stubborn. It took me a long time to be like, fine, I'll try and 1/4. And I 1/4 everything now, almost every single band, because it's the best way to get an accurate fit. Okay, making sure nothing's twisted. Now what we need to do is we need to 1/4 our binding. So holding the seam up, mark that halfway point, and then match the halfway point with the seam. And the top and bottom halfway points are your 1/4 marks there. All right, now I'm going to put where my seam is in the back. So putting right sides together, we're going to match our band up. Making sure we don't twist it. We don't want to twist the band or the pieces, which is not an easy feat for me. Okay, I'm gonna put this clips that I have and just do a little extra clip there. Okay. So now that is all lined up, it should look like this. See if I can hold it up without. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to attach this binding to the front, we need to make sure that we stretch the binding and not the fabric when we attach it. So to kind of help me, instead of sewing it where the binding is on the upside, I'm going to actually attach it so that I can see my layer pieces and make sure that I'm not stretching those pieces out. I like to start in the back just because if I make a mistake, it's not as noticeable as if it was in the front. Okay, and I've already started twisting things around, so yikes. Okay, so just a 1/4 inch. I believe that's all. Maybe 3/8 inch. Okay, let me do math on this really quick. If it's 1.5 inches, if we do 3/8 inches and 3/8 inches, that's 6/8. So, yeah, okay, we'll do 3/8 inches. Because I don't like doing 1/4 inch seams anyways, so I can get behind that. Okay, so just making sure that my binding, raw edges, and the raw edges of my neck are lined up as I sew. Just stretching the binding pieces as I go if I need to. That's another reason why it's really important to find 1/4 points, because then your stretching is even throughout. You don't want it all stretched in the front and then it's straight in the back. You need the stretch to go all the way around. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it so that right sides are out. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold it over top of the stitch so it lays like this, and then we're going to top stitch it right along this edge. So use like a stitch. If you're using a regular sewing machine, just make sure when you do your top stitching, if you're not using a twin needle, that you're still using a stretch stitch. So the same if when you're attaching the binding, make sure you have a stretch stitch at all times. You don't want to you don't want those seams to pop. So I would too recommend doing a stretch stitch and then also going through and doing like a zigzag on the seams, the seam allowance, just to give it another little extra oomph. All right, so we're just going to fold the binding around the stitch that we made. So around the edge, covering the stitch that we made, top stitching right along the edge there to keep that nice and smooth against it. So it's nice because it's just a single fold binding instead of sometimes with binding you have to do like a double fold where you fold it in half and that's just another step. So I'm going for this one. Just making sure that it's nice and even, that my seams up. really trying to make sure I'm not twisting anything, that my seam is up towards the top of the binding instead of laying down. Just making sure everything's nice and straight. And even. Okay, and I'm getting to the start, so I'm gonna trim these threads. Over a couple of, like ½ inch, pull my threads to the front, snip them onto the back. All right. And if you've got a lot of excess, you can go through and cut this off the back. But now we have our neck binding on. I'm not going to trim, maybe I should, because we need to, when we put the arm binding on, it could get in the way. So I'm going to go through and trim some of this excess binding off right now. So just snip a little bit, making sure I'm just getting the binding. I'm not cutting the stitches. I'm not cutting the fabric for the bra or tank. Probably could make it cleaner, but okay, here's the seam. Just trimming this excess off. And if you want a little bit extra support, you can always add some elastic into your binding. That'll kind of help pull things up. Honestly, since this doesn't have bra cups in it, I'm not sure that I would wear it as a bra alone. But, I mean, maybe. It does feel very supportive. Okay. Almost done. Just snip out the last little bit here. All right. So now we got nice clean binding. Making sure I'm not all twisted, because I am. There we go. Ooh, pretty. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Let's get this done. I'm so excited to put this thing on. All right. Now what we need to do is we need to attach our back binding to our side, our arms, our arm binding. So the back binding is a little bit smaller than the arms. And what we're going to do is just put them right sides together, matching up raw edges on the short end here. Attach those. almost grabbed my big fabric scissors to cut the threads. Okay, so then we're just going to attach the other arm binding to the other side of the back. So you can tell which one is the back in case if you just fold it over, and you'll see that the back binding is smaller. So again, lining up the raw edges of the small edge there, we're just going to attach them together. Okay. And now what we need to do is we are going to lay everything out like this. Oh, wait, first I need to measure because the seams are not going to be where the arms go. So we need to measure. We need to mark the middle back. So we'll clip that. And then mark the location of the shoulder points from each end. Okay, so from the end of, it's pretty wet. We'll just use that mascara. Oh, there's things everywhere. It drives me bonkers. All right, so from the short end of one of the arm binding pieces, we need to mark, based off the chart, you need to mark, oh, it's actually not that. Okay, I can use this ruler. Okay, from each end, I need to mark the shoulder point. That doesn't seem quite right, but it is. Okay, trust the process. 8. Mine is 8.5. So you just need to mark where your shoulder point should be. I'm just going to mark it with a clip since I'll need to clip it anyways. And then same thing with the other side. Just find where your shoulder should be. Shoulder. Okay. And then we need to find the center back, which I think we already did, but we'll do it again just to be safe. Okay. So we'll find the center back of our tank and bra. Should be right where your pleat is. And then what we need to do now is right sides together, starting at one end of our bias or our T-back. We're going to match the corner of the end of our binding strip to the bottom corner of our T-back. That's not attached to anything. Then we're going to pull, well, not pull, we're going to match the binding where we marked our shoulder to the shoulder piece opposite of where the other binding is. And we're going to continue down and around till we get to the center back. And then we will align. That's not my center back. Here's my center back. Okay, making sure we keep right sides together and our binding isn't twisted. We're going to come down and align our center back point with the center of our binding strip, and then back around, lining right sides together, the shoulder with the shoulder part that we marked. And then back down to the other side of our T back. Okay, so that should all be right sides together. Now what we need to do is we need to sew using 3/8 inches. We're going to attach the back and the binding together in the arms. Now remember, it's not going to go on the arms of our tank because we already hemmed that. It's going to go down the arms of the bra onto the back where our back tank is matched or is on it, and then back up the other arm of the bra and back onto the T. Okay, so we need to attach that. This is the part that I'm like, if I'm going to mess something up, it's going to be this. Now, again, just like with the front, we need to stretch the fabric to match the binding. All right, you want to make sure you stretch it evenly throughout. That's why we pinned it, so that we could get a good even stretch. Again, making sure all your raw edges are 3/8 inch seam allowance. You want to make sure, especially if you're using a slipperier fabric, actually any fabric, that it's not rolling on the edges because it's such they're such small edges. You don't want to. Sorry, I have my serious sewing face on. Okay, and down. Just making sure too that you're getting the binding and both edges of your bra. Now I'm coming up to where I attached my back, so I want to just make sure that that's nice and flat and straight. We're starting to get to the other side. Again, just stretching everything out, making sure it's nice and even. All raw edges are aligned. With slipperier fabric, I probably should have pinned a bit more, but so far it's going okay. starting to get back to the other side of our T. All right. Now, what we need to do is just like with the neck, we need to fold the binding over top of our seam and just top stitch it down. Gonna make sure my seam is pointing up. I've done a lot of like things with smaller straps at the shoulders, and they always make me so nervous, but I'm loving this technique. It's actually turned out awesome. In the past, it's not been so awesome. So but this binding is fabulous. I love it. Okay, just going all the way around, making sure. If you remember from my earlier video about the fabric, I did end up changing my binding around a little bit after I had an aha moment of what the binding's supposed to look like. So instead of doing, I was going to do blue on the arms and the boho around, but then I realized that I'm binding the bra and not the tank, so the boho binding would be perfect. All the way around, and I am loving it. I'm so excited. We're so close to being done. So just finishing up this binding. Okay. That's it. Pull the threads towards us. Locking in the back. Let's snip these ones. Okay, so just like with the other binding, we need to go through and trim the excess off. For right now, I'm just going to trim the excess off at the T-back because once we attach the T-back, we're done. And you don't need to watch me trim excess binding for another 10 minutes. I mean, it's not really. That's a huge exaggeration, but that's okay. just remember when you're trimming the binding, make sure to just get the binding, not the stitches, not the fabric, just the binding. All right, so now what we need to do is attach our T to our back. Super easy. We're just going to line the back fabric up with our T, and then we'll just cover stitch it closed. That's what it says, or just top stitch it. It says together. If you have an extra set of hands available to help you, you may find this step easier. I only have my 2 hands. No extras today. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to pin this. All right. I have to. Pardon my reach. All right. So you just kind of want to see how far down you want it to be. Try it on. See if you want it more or less. I'm just going to wing it, and then I can always fix it later if I need to. But you just kind of want to make sure, though, that it's going to be the same amount across. In other words, you're going to have it lopsided, which is not good. So right there's good. So we'll just pin it so that the backs line up. Every time I use pins, I get myself every single time. Okay, and then all we need to do now is just cover stitch this top right here. So, because like I showed in an earlier video, or maybe it was this one, I don't know, I don't remember. I'm going to start a little bit further down on my binding, just so that I give the machine enough time to pick up those stitches. Try to get it lined up right with the cover stitching on the, or the top stitching on the binding already. Okay. All right, let's lock those threads to the back. This is the moment of truth. This will tell me if I twisted anything. Okay. And there we have it. Our agility tank. Yay. Oh, I'm so excited about this one. Okay. Get rid of those extra threads. Get you away. All right. So we've got to go back through and trim off the excess binding on the other side. But other than that, it's all done. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Look at how stinking amazing this is. No way. I am in love right now. I can't. I can't. Okay. I'm super excited to try this on. I cannot wait to see yours because this thing just blew my mind. I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so I cannot wait to see your finished agility tank. Make sure you share finished pictures of it in the comments, please, because I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. Wow. Look at it. Wow. Oh my word. Okay. Anyways, please share your finished makes. I need to be inspired by everybody because I'm going to make like a million more of these. These are so awesome. Yes. Yay, we did it. Sorry, I'm really excited. Thank you so much for joining me this week in our agility tank so long. I had a blast. It was nice because it was more of a relaxed pace versus the last couple of weeks. Next week, we'll be sewing up the Stitch Upon a Time Ursula leggings. I know we just did the Patterns for Pirates peg legs, but I wanted to do, I live in leggings. I live in them. That's pretty much the only thing I ever wear. So having a few extra pairs is great, but I also kind of wanted to try some different patterns to see different styles, different add-on things that you can do to them. And I really loved the bottom part of the Ursula leggings, how you can kind of do the lattice bottoms to it. So I was like, well, let's just give this a go. And I think it would look awesome with the agility tank. I'm so excited. Thank you so much again. And I will see you next week for our Stitch Upon a Time Ursula leggings sew along. Bye.